Hello and welcome back everyone to another episode of Heart of the Cast. Emergency cast. We had to leave this one to simmer for a day because it's the ban list. It's the big one.
Yeah.
And we've waited a long time for this, haven't we?
We have. We were talking about it all week about like, oh, we're just going to record it at some way throughout the week when it drops, and then we can easily like publish it on Saturday. Turns out Konami didn't want us to do that.
They dropped the ban list with 4 hours remaining for August 31st for EU. That's probably a good starting point as the context of this ban list, I suppose. It's one of the most important ban lists of all time, I think, in terms of its context and timing for the year and the format. People are very sick of Snake Eye.
I tend to agree to that. Yep.
Yeah, it's people are pretty sick and tired of Snake Eye. It's been quite a poor season in some ways. People haven't really enjoyed the gameplay because of the one-card combo style of the formats. And it's really expensive. Again, just another super expensive format. So people are frustrated, and it was just one thing on top of another. And it took a while to actually announce the ban list. Well, actually, it was very well communicated initially.
In relative to how it usually is, I think. Like the fact that we got it's gonna release late August. Like when was it? 1 or 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Is like it's
before
good
a
for
bunch of
Konami
ICSs.
standards. It's good communication for Konami standards, but by general standards, it's just like okay, right?
So the reality is, like, by general standards, it's worse than okay, because if we look at the context of where we are, I don't know what it is. Maybe does every card game just have their ban list at the same time? We had a Magic ban list last week. Hearthstone patch notes at the end of last week. One Piece had one, I think, like a month ago. And all of these different games have developers, R&D
so
teams.
Yu-Gi-Oh gets made fun of more.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since we were last, too. But the way it works is, you know, as I give the example of Wizards of the Coasts, they printed, they had a blog post with their developers, 3,200 word document explaining their list, explaining what happened, and they knew it was going to be 5 p.m. August 26th.
That's a lot of words, man.
Yeah, because I would love to know what the logic and reasoning was with time seal to 3, you know? Like, I'd be down to understand that.
Dude, I could give you like 1,000 words on that.
Could you 1,000-word essay on why time seal is? Yeah. So a lot of people have been upset about like the situation and stuff, and let's say people got agitated in the week leading up to this drop, didn't they?
The community behavior was stellar during the week leading up to this Forbidden Limited list.
So for context, if you've been living under a rock and you haven't been on Twitter or social media, there has been this AI-generated image of a horse vomiting in some kind of like record store or whatever from the perspective of CCTV camera. It is the most obscure, bizarre, random thing, but as a form of quote-unquote protest, people have been spamming this under all of Konami's social media posts for the last week. Like, Konami will make a post saying, "Hey guys, we're reprinting Bonfire," which is a genuinely really cool thing.
Yeah, that's the craziest part. Even like the good news.
So every single post for the last 2 weeks or so, this vomiting horse has been spammed and spammed on Facebook, on Instagram. Well, I don't know if you can reply with images on Instagram. I don't use Instagram personally. They actually turned off picture posting on Facebook. But on Twitter, you can reply with images. And it was just, you scroll down, it's like a vomiting horse. And people took it a step further by photoshopping it into Nightmare Unicorn, Kirin, Memon Totlin, Totsu Shinigo.
My boy Sleipnir also got its fair share.
Yeah, it was rough. So why were they doing that?
I mean, I guess you just already said it. It's just like a general feeling of frustration and just a way to vent. I'm also sure that like at least 50% just joined because they thought it was funny.
I mean, yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure for most people actually it wasn't that deep. It probably is just like some people started it and other people thought it was funny. Which might just be like 90% of the reason.
So, in some ways, you know, you might be tutting and shaking your head thinking, yep, typical Yu-Gi-Oh community, worst bunch of people in the world. which admittedly, in hindsight, it is kind of immature, whatever, how you want to describe it. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately you have to look at the root cause, which is like, why are people doing this? It isn't just to be annoying, right? It's like a general sentiment of frustration over the last year. We've had so many debates and
Is
discussions over
that
the
just
last...
me?
Hmm?
Your mic keeps cutting out for me. Is that just me, or does chat have that as well?
Um, so apparently I've had some issues with my mic today. I hope not. Chat, am I okay? It's a little bit crackly.
It's
Fine on
crackly. No,
stream
it's
at
not that.
least.
It's just like it turns off. Like mid sentence, I just can't hear you anymore.
Let me turn off the automatic detection in case.
Okay.
Is this okay?
It might be. It's probably a Discord thing because
I hope
the
it's
people on in your chat are saying it's fine for them.
okay. Uh, well, hopefully this won't ruin the podcast. But yeah. So anyway, what were we talking about? The context of the ban list and why it was an issue.
Why people were doing what they were doing,
Yeah.
or
So
like the
yeah.
the
So
overall the horse situation.
um, I think like ultimately what people need to do is focus on why it's happening, and I hope Konami
Mhm.
doesn't look at the behavior of the player base over the last week and think, well, screw you guys, we're never going to communicate with you again, we're never going to talk to you again because you people clearly can't behave yourself, you're immature, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That is one way to look at it, but I would hope that they maybe understand that it isn't for no reason. It isn't just magically out of nowhere to be difficult. I think that people act unreasonably and people act in a disrespectful way, let's be real,
Yeah.
if they feel that they are on the receiving end of disrespect and being unreasonable, being treated
Hmm.
unreasonably. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like what the heart of the matter is.
Yeah, I think it's like it's a matter of I think both sides are not behaving properly here, but like the Konami's doing it first, basically. Konami started it like a children argument. All right, they did it first.
So hopefully, like again, like if you look at like how the community perception has been, it's been very good and very well behaved, I think, initially, right? Like when they made the post months ago saying when they gave us the date, not date, but the time frame, people
Mhm.
were, I think, generally super well receiving of that.
Yeah.
They really appreciate because we were stuck in this weird situation where it's like, are they going to make a list before Worlds? Sorry, before the NEWCQs
Yeah,
and the
yeah, yeah.
WCQs, et cetera, et cetera. And then they told us specifically, and it was like, okay, end of August, fine. That's clearly going to be after
Yeah.
the WCQs, but it also kind of was a bit weird with Sacramento, maybe. When was Sacramento? That was like 2 weeks ago at this
I mean,
point.
Sacramento was middle of August, so like when they said late August, people, I feel like you knew if you were going to Sacramento that it was going to be old list.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, in general, it was really nice because we knew then we could prepare for Euros and the NAWCQ without having to worry about a list dropping like a week before, and ruining basically all the time you would put into testing. So that was a very nice and reasonable thing to do at that point, to be like, hey, we know you guys are speculating about a potential list, but we can confirm there is none until after those events.
Yeah. And again, for more information for viewers listening, what happened also is we had this Shadow Duelist event that was leading up to the late August period time. So this was an event where Zayn Malik, of all people, yes, that One Direction ex singer, was the
Hmm.
Shadow Duelist. Konami hired him to do basically it was just a Challenger Cup. It was just a Master Duel tournament, and the
Yeah,
winner got the Shadow Duelist mask.
yeah,
Um, and when that event and that live stream happened, the first thing that someone in my chat noticed, they had the ban list date in the description box.
hmm,
So we hadn't been told on Twitter or social media when the ban list was, other than late August by this point, until
yeah,
suddenly we picked up and noted that the YouTube description box said the 31st. And then
yeah.
eventually, 30 minutes later, when the stream actually went live, Billy announced to everyone and said, okay, guys, the ban list is the 31st. Now, I think they did that, just to make everyone shut up, basically.
Yeah, I
Because,
think so too. I agree with that 100%. I don't think that was something they were gonna mention in that kind of stream.
mhm,
Which was even it was a Master Duel themed like event,
Exactly.
right? Like it was a Master Duel Challenger Cup with like a Zayn Malik uh, cooperation. Like it had nothing to do with with the TCG or the list. But I'm pretty sure they were just trying to prevent people from just, I don't know, spamming horses in the chat for that event, I suppose, and ruining it.
Which they did anyway, but you know.
They did anyways, yeah, obviously.
So yeah, that was an odd thing. What did you think of that like whole thing? You know what a Venn diagram is? Do you have a different word for it in German? Wait, I can't hear you anymore. Hello? Say something. I hope that's is that your end or your sound's gone? Um, is it Discord? Let me see. I don't see a green ring around you. Josh's best take.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. What
Was
happened?
I muted for you guys?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't hear you.
Huh. Something on your.
Is my internet being weird again?
It wasn't an internet thing. I could see you perfectly. It was just muted.
So what is Discord doing?
I don't know, man. All right, we
Anyways,
good? I think we're fine.
well, now I can hear you again.
Okay, we're good. We're good. Yeah. So, what did you think of like the whole concept of this event? And do you know what a Venn diagram is?
I know what a Venn diagram is. I don't know what you are trying to.
Well, my follow-up question is, where do you think the intersection is between Zayn Malik fans and Yu-Gi-Oh players, or potential Yu-Gi-Oh players?
I guess it's. I don't think it's that bad. I don't know. Are you trying to like get to the point that it's like a bad collab because?
I don't know if bad is the word. I don't want to say bad because I like that
Mhm.
they're reaching out and trying and hitting different markets, but it's like
Yeah.
you know Zayn Malik as a musician and his type of fan base, are they gonna see him announce that he's the Shadow Duels on Instagram and be like, "Oh, I'm going to download Master Duel"?
I think in terms of their age, it'd be fine because I feel like when was One Direction really big?
Like 12 years ago, 10 years ago.
Yeah. And how old was like an average One Direction fan? 7?
Whoa, dude, come on, be respectful here.
But it was mostly teenagers, wasn't it?
Yeah.
See, so now they're in like they'd be in the age group where it'd be like suited, like 20 somethings. That's fine.
I don't know. So I actually did this thing yesterday. I checked out the Steam charts, which is like the playtime of Master Duel.
Hmm.
So this was like I think 2 or 3 days after that live stream, and nothing changed. Like I couldn't, no, I didn't notice like a spike. I looked up some Google trends to see if like Yu-Gi-Oh as a like thing was being searched more on Google.
Okay, so was it? But how did they promote it? Was it something that Zayn also had to post on his
Yeah.
own like
Dude, it was
socials?
insane. He posted on Instagram that he was the Shadow Duelist, and thanks to Konami and added the stuff and all that kind of thing. And
Hmm.
it got 250,000 likes. I don't know how many views. Um, but it was 250,000 likes.
And there was like not even a little bump.
I checked Steam charts. That's just Steam. That's just PC. Um, but I didn't see anything increase on the Steam chart section. Maybe people are downloading on Xbox and PlayStation and mobile. But
I don't
Steam
know.
PC specifically, didn't really see a difference between the trends. If anything, Snake Eyes release had the biggest spike in the last 2 years.
That's crazy.
So more people
That's
care
weird
about Snake
behavior.
Eye than Zayn Malik. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the weird part about about collabs. I mean, you wanna hit up people that like don't know about your stuff yet, right? So, and to an extent, I kind of get it, but I'm also not a marketing expert, so I don't know.
I think there has to be some type of peripheral interest, right? Like I think if they got
Yeah.
like Moist Critical or like Ludwig, who have shown interest in Macedon in the
Oh no,
past.
absolutely, I agree with you there. There probably are better people for that.
Yeah, like if they're gamers and their audience are gamers, they
Yeah,
might take an interest in
yeah,
a video game, right? Like that
yeah.
just seems logical.
No, I
Whereas
agree with that. I
Zayn
agree with that.
Malik fans, it's like, what is the typical interest of a Zayn Malik fan? Is it card games?
I mean, there's
Maybe.
like the thing is they're like probably popular to the point where they probably have a lot of people in their audience that would potentially be interested, but
Mm,
also like a lot of them aren't, right? Like probably maybe it's like let's say it's like 95% of people that won't be interested. That remaining 5% is still a lot of people.
mm-hmm.
But I definitely get where you're coming from. You probably could have gotten the same sort of like relevant reach from someone who's a little smaller but has a better fitting audience and probably also would have been cheaper. I don't know what they paid them, but
Yeah, so I
that's
think the
probably not
idea
cheap.
was that he is historically a Yu-Gi-Oh player. Like he showed like his binder on stream. He had like a Quasar.
And maybe it
Um,
was a good fit. Maybe it was a good fit in that. I didn't actually watch the stream. I didn't actually get to see it.
but I thought it was also like kind of odd because um it was really interesting when they were asking him questions. I'm trying to not say that it was uncomfortable, but I
Mhm.
think Kangas at one point asked him like, "Oh, so like what is like your favorite monster? What's like a cool monster?" And he was like, "Oh, the one that you have to put together." And I was like, "Really? He doesn't know the name of
Gate Guardian.
Exodia?" No,
Oh,
Exodia.
Exodia. Okay. No,
Yeah.
I thought a Gate Guardian because I felt like really you probably know Exodia.
And then he like asked him, "What's your favorite Master Duel mate?" And then he clearly has not logged into the game.
I mean,
So
yeah, that's just but that's just like poor preparation. I feel like from the interviewer side, like you just like can't ask those specific questions
it
to a
was
freaking like celebrity.
it was really funny because then he was like, "Oh, was it do you like the Blue Eyes mate?" And he was like, "Yeah, yeah, for sure." Like,
Oh yeah, that one. That was my favorite.
it was very clearly just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. No, that's just like yeah, I got you. You gotta brief him better, dude.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess like the other part as well was I think he asked him about the anime and he was like, "What's your favorite duel or something?" And then again it was kind of just like stumbling, and then he suggested like, "Oh, Kaiba again because you like Blue Eyes," and then he kind of just went like, "Oh yeah, the first one."
That just seems like they needed to brief him a little bit better and be like, hey, here are the questions that we're gonna ask roughly. Make sure you prepare.
But it's also it was just kind of I was kind of confusing for me because I was trying to understand like I'm just wondering is he actually a Yu-Gi-Oh player? I mean it's fine if he's not, no disrespect, whatever. I'm
No,
just
here's the
curious
thing.
like
I couldn't tell you I'd have to think for a moment to tell you my favorite anime duel because it's been like I don't know how long since I've seen it.
yeah, I mean, I
So like he
guess.
may have been a Yu-Gi-Oh fan as a child, but like
hmm
that doesn't mean he remembers his favorite duel from the anime.
I think someone found like on his Instagram from like months ago, maybe years ago, he has like he had like a random picture of like an Icarus attack um on his Insta, which
No,
is
he's a Blackwing duelist. Oh my god. No, it's over. It's over. We're done.
but yeah, the whole
He's
stream
a
was
bird kind of guy. Oh nah.
birds are cringe apparently, according to Josh, for anyone who forgot.
They are cringe. They are very cringe.
So yeah, the interview. It started with like the interviewer Billy and Kangas were talking, and then they had like this special effect, like this TV crackling effect, and it was like Nocturne's like hacking like the stream or whatever, and then they kept going, and then eventually they did the big reveal of Nocturne, and then they started talking to him, and the audio wasn't working. It was
Mm.
it was just like they
All
asked him a
these
question.
things that you're describing would have made me physically uncomfortable watching the stream, so I'm glad I didn't.
It was I felt ill, dude. It was like they
It-
they were trying to ask him questions and he was like just it was muted, so there was technical difficulties for like 3 or 4 minutes. And then they went to the game and then the duel started. Game one, load in, disconnect.
yeah.
So they restarted the game. I misheard Kangas. I thought he said game loss. But they very specifically changed the rules because DC is a game loss, right? But they didn't issue a game loss. So game two starts. They load in, disconnect. Two insta DCs back to back. It was rough. So yeah, they just restarted. I don't know if he used a different device or something, but then he they
How did
actually.
everything go wrong like that?
I know it was insane. And then they
That's
actually
so.
they actually started the game. I mean, the game, it was a 2-0. It was like Snake Eye just bullying Centurion. It was like whatever. The duel was, whatever, but it was also kind of awkward because like they eventually got Nocturne's audio working, and it was the same voice from the ad. Like it was this whole like I am the darkness, like
Yeah.
that type of thing. So like Kangas would ask him like, "Oh, what did you think of that play?" And then he would be like, and like we couldn't really understand. So like they were, and they also it was awkward because like Zayn would randomly try and say something like, right, but then it would be on top of Kangas like trying to speak, and they would like awkwardly interrupt each other, and it just wasn't a good dynamic. Oh man, and I sat there and I was sitting watching with my stream, and like there were people like translating for me. Like I could make out some things I just didn't know what he said.
Oh, look, at this point, it sounds so bad that it's actually like good again.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just loved it because I thought it was so funny. Uh,
But
and
it
then
is very unfortunate for the people that planned it.
yeah, and then the icing. I know we're spending a little time talking about this, but just to give you
Yeah.
some context for what the last week has been for those of you who missed out. And then my favorite part was they did like a post match interview with Zayn, and
Yeah.
they asked him what he thought about the duel, and his exact. I don't want to miss like represent or something, but I think they asked him like, "Oh, what did you think his dueling was impressive?" And then Zayn said, "Yeah, haha, his chain links were really impressive." So it was like he was trying to bring in like some kind of knowledge he has about Yu-Gi-Oh, but then it
Ooh,
just
that word sounds fancy. They use that a
yeah.
lot. I'm gonna say chain links.
So he said, "Yeah, the chain links were impressive."
Zayn
Uh,
Malik, what's your favorite step of the Snake Eye combo? Answer right now.
yeah, it's the chain link to Flam version.
He
Yeah.
chain linked very good.
So yeah, that's where we've been at for the last week. That's
Yeah.
where the context was, and I think throughout that whole stream, I think eventually they stopped because I instantly closed the chat on my screen because as soon as I loaded up, obviously people wanted to be, "Hey Farfa, look at me," and they were just putting the horse emoji that you can do. So I closed the chat immediately, and then I don't know how it went after that. I heard it wasn't great,
Mm.
but yeah, that was the conclusion of that. So.
Yep.
And again, I think it just comes down to like there really is no reason why we can't just be told a date, I feel.
Yeah, and here's my question. Do you think it'll change something? Like how this entire thing went?
I it's really disappointing, but I personally get this feeling that I think it's going to work out for the worse. I think they're going to see the behavior of the players and be like, "Well, we're just not going to tell them anymore. We're just going to keep it on the
That's
wraps."
that's what I'm afraid of too, because I feel like that's like historically what's happened. I remember this one time we got this article on banlist changes.
The
You know
planned
the
one?
one. I don't know exactly which one it was, but there was one where they gave us a little like text about the reasoning of the ban. It's relatively long time ago.
Mhm.
And then like that just got like I feel like that the community just shit on that one.
Yeah, so it was
Uh
2012, and I think that they
yeah.
were addressing some of the hits to a bunch of like plant synchro cards. When the format was actually basically dominated by, was it like Macro Rabbit or something at the
It
time?
was I think I'm pretty sure it's already like Dino Rabbit Insector wind up kind of times if you're
Yeah,
talking 2012
and
and they just like
they
hit Tengu Plant or something.
yeah, so like essentially the ban list was there to just be like, "Hey guys, stop playing this deck, play the new XE stuff." I think
Yeah.
realistically is what the ban list was for. But then they made an article trying to talk about balance and all the game design stuff. The community, I wasn't there for it, but from what I heard, the community would like huge uproar. They were just like, "This is absolutely nonsense. Like nothing
Yeah.
you're saying making sense," and they never talked to us again and
Which,
tried to give an
to be fair
explanation.
though, like it was not a great ban list, right? It wasn't a good justification. Like the behavior was fine, right? The fact that we got an article was cool, but that didn't change the fact that the ban list hit Tengu Plant in Dino Rabbit format. Like, like that you can't like you can communicate as much as you want. If what you're doing isn't good, then people are gonna tell you, hey, that doesn't make sense, right?
I think ultimately we've all as a community kind of figured out that the ban list is there as a promotional tool for product, first and
Not
foremost. You've gone muted again.
Loud about having a game like that, but like in order to sell product, you need to. Am I muted again?
You muted very temporarily. You're back now.
Okay, all right. What I was
Just say that point again about the marketing tool of the ban list.
it is a marketing tool, but like I feel like one important aspect of marketing your game is making sure it's balanced, right? Like that is part
Mhm.
of it. That is a major job of the ban list as well.
So I think if you were to rank the order of priority, I think making new product good is number one, and dead game balance comes after, right? Because otherwise, this ban list that we're going to talk about now could have gone a bit differently, right?
I feel like the order is marketing first or business first, but I feel like they should like do it a little bit less
I,
relative to the game balance.
ideally.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's talk about it. Here's the ban list. I think we all went into this hoping Snake Eye would basically just die. That hasn't happened.
Yeah.
It's funny watching your Twitter over the last 24 hours. It was like, yeah, no, good, solid ban list, 7 out of 10, and then slowly but surely it started.
I will say, I have changed my mind again.
Oh, okay.
I've been thinking about it a lot, and I actually, I guess, do you want to? I guess you want my conclusion at the start of what I like my overall feeling right now.
Yeah, sure. I guess we'll do
Okay.
general sentiments.
Yeah. So I look, I am on your I'm on your side when you say like Snake Eyes isn't dead and so on and so forth. And I am also not looking forward to what Snake Eyes is going to do, especially post Rage of the Abyss. I personally still think the ban list is solid, and I have a bigger issue with like Rage of the Abyss in general. Um, because here's my point. Like always in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, we have like top tier meta decks that have a certain like lifespan or life cycle, right? You get them at like full power, then you have like a first list, I don't know, 1 month, 2 months into their existence or something that gives them maybe a slap on the wrist because we all know obviously they don't want to ban the new deck, right? And that's like fine with us, like we understand that. And then a couple months down the line on the next ban list is when we expect him to maybe add like significant hits to those decks, right? And after that, which is maybe like we're talking like a 6 to 9 months lifespan here. I feel like if you look at historic archetypes, like I don't know, Necros, Dragon Rulers, or something, some of them have lasted like a year, some of them have lasted like 9 months, but about that is like the lifespan of a top tier Yu-Gi-Oh deck, right? And after they've been hit significantly on a ban list, they just like slowly fade out, right? Like they either get at that point power crept by new decks, or they get like one additional hit on another ban list, right? And then we're done, right? Until they eventually maybe return, right? Um, and I think with Snake Eyes, we are towards the end of that life cycle. We are where we expected significant hits on that deck, maybe for it to be playable for a couple more months and then just fade out. Maybe like one more hit and we're done. But then, why is there Snake Eye support in Rage of the Abyss?
Well, the thing is, before even Rage of the Abyss, I don't think like Snake Eye's anywhere near done, right? Like it is.
That's another topic. But like in general, I wanted to emphasize how like I find it so weird and crazy that we're getting Snake Eye support right now. That we are in a state where the next core set is releasing Snake Eye support. I can't think of any historical example that even comes close to this situation, right? Like all the meta decks, like this is like if they printed Necros support and incredibly good Necros support towards the end of 2015.
So I think I actually had a really long think about this yesterday, and I was trying to
Yeah.
understand this exact thing. What
Hmm.
what we've got recently is it's really cool, like thematically and stuff, because what they're doing is they're taking these lore topics and these themes, and
Yeah.
then dragging them out over multiple years. Like you'll see, like
Yeah.
the whole Visas art line lasted like a whole season and a half,
Yeah.
branded in a similar way.
Yeah.
So the difference is like the Visas lore. There was some intertwining between them. Like I think
Yeah,
Manadium was the one that basically used a lot of the portion of the lore.
yeah,
Um, and then the same Branded as well kind of took a lot of different pieces of different decks. You know, I don't think we've
yeah,
ever had like Springgan cards and stuff. So similarly with Snake Eye, we see the Diabell Star is very much she's the centerpiece of the lore. We've got White Woods, and then that kind of
yeah,
goes off into Azamina. Um, and that's really cool lore wise and thematically. The problem is game balance wise
yeah,
is that they're doing what you've said. The problem is
yeah.
that they are just creating more support months after the deck is people are sick and tired of it.
And this is something that you just, if you want to do it like this, like have a lore archetype that receives support for a long time, you have to do it properly, and they just did it very poorly with Snake Eyes. They did it, in my opinion, they did it well with Branded, because Branded, actually, if you look at it from that perspective, they did a really good job with Branded, because Branded was alive for a long time, and it kept getting like a little bit of new tools. It kind of grew with the power creep of the other decks, right? The other decks got stronger, and Branded got a little bit of an extra tool here and there. Maybe they got a little hit here and there as well, when they banned like Expulsion or something a little bit. But Branded was always kind of like here in this like tier 2, maybe sometimes creeping into the tier 1 category. It was never like dominant, only powerful deck in the game, or like super dominant deck, right? It was always playable, always good, but never felt like it was overly powerful. And the same is even true with the Manadium, like the Visa Starfrost lore. Obviously, Tyr was really powerful, but those were like distinctively different decks, right? It was possible to get rid of Tyr and still promote Visas, because there were other Visas decks out there that were also playable on their own. With Snake Eyes, it's basically just Snake Eyes, and they're pumping more and more and more and more stuff into Snake Eyes for no freaking reason. Like, why is Azamina a deck that is basically exclusively played with Snake Eyes? Why doesn't Azamina have synergy with, I don't know, White Forest, a deck that people like but isn't top tier? Like, even Goblin Bikers is part of the Diabell Star lore. Do they care about making Goblin Bikers good? Apparently not.
Yeah, and it's so much to do with I think the synergy within that story.
Yeah,
There's some that work like they are in the same universe, but they cannot function together. Like you can't play Shadol and Clifford together, but they are definitely part of the same storyline. You can't play, um, you know, Tearlament with Kashtira, but they are
yeah,
definitely in the same universe.
yeah.
But I guess this time round, everything is just so intertwined, and it just works both
Yeah, well,
gameplay
like,
and lore wise well together.
bro, they're making the lore. Then write the story differently, dude. Like,
Literally, you can okay, chat. You can't really play Cash Deal with tier. Okay, if you
no,
really
but it's
try
like,
hard, I'm
it's
sure you
not an
can. But
excuse, right? It's simply not an excuse, because it's like they're making the story, right? They're like, oh well,
bro, it's
the,
your game.
it's not my fault that the Snake Eye cards only work with the Diabell Star cards, and the Examina cards, this new thing we just invented, it's about to come out. Well, those apparently only work with Snake Eyes. Like, oh, sorry, you can't do anything about it. Like, bro, you invented them. Like, put some Goblin Bikers on the artwork and make them work with Goblin Bikers. Like, it's so mind blowingly dumb to me. And all this to say, I don't blame the TCG department and this current ban list for this situation, because like, what the hell are they supposed to do?
Yeah, they've been designed into a corner, which I think goes to the whole problem of lists and product being separate between regions to some extent, right? It feels like that also is somewhat responsible for this.
Yeah,
When there's like new cards coming, okay, cool. Well, we can't hit Snake Eye because there's a whole ass new archetype that's supposed to work with Snake Eye. We
yeah,
can't kill the deck. So what
yeah,
can you do? You can't do anything.
yeah. And this is basically why I took a step back. I looked at this list and I was like, if I just forget about the fact that the OCG for some reason made Rage of the Abyss the way it is, right? With the Snake Eye support and everything. I think if you look at this list with some distance, I think it's a good list. I think Apoban, I don't want to go, I don't know if you were planning to go through each individual hit at some point throughout this, but
Yeah, we can.
um,
But I mean, there's obviously a bunch of
I
useless
mean,
ones we don't
everyone
need to
knows
talk
what's
about.
on it, right? I can talk about it. So, like, there's a lot of good stuff on there. There's a lot of stuff that we were asking for. There is even stuff on here that is better than what we expected, which we'll talk about as well, like the Fiendsmith hits, for example. Like, there's a lot of good stuff here. Um, and the Snake Eye hits, if you take Rage of the Abyss out of the equation, the Snake Eye hits are actually not terrible. Like, yeah, they didn't kill the deck, But like the deck is also, it feels like a long time, but the deck at its current power level is like 6, 7 months old, right? Like it's, you could argue that they didn't need to completely slaughter it. Like, yeah, we all want it because we don't like the deck that much, at least the majority. But like for the typical lifespan of a top tier deck, it's technically not 100% necessary for it to completely die, right? It was going to be okay if we were going to keep playing, like, for example, a watered down version of Snake Eye for the next couple months, which would have been like Snake Eye Fire King, which I think is really good now. It's a really good deck, but it's not been played like that for a good reason. Like it's weaker than this pure Snake Eye deck was before those hits. And I feel like if Rage of the Abyss just didn't come out, um, us having Fire King Snake Eye as a good deck would have been okay, right? And if they just then in 3 months be like, okay, now we're done with Snake Eye, right? Or at least that's how I feel like. I feel like without Rage of the Abyss, this list would have been fine.
Yes, but I mean, we just have to accept that it is with Rage of the Abyss, right? Like we can talk about
It's
like
hard. It's hard to forget about Rage of the Abyss looming in 6 weeks. I agree with you, but at that point, like, are we really expecting the TCG people like future sniping a set 6 weeks from now that they haven't even probably had much like say in how it got designed? Like, is the ban list's job to friggin' handle problems that are created by a set in like 6 weeks or something? I don't know.
I
Like, I
think
wish it did that. I'm not saying it shouldn't do that. Like, I'm just saying, like, I feel like the major culprit here is set design and how they're designing and spacing out Snake Eye releases.
personally, I think, absolutely, right? If they when's the next ban list? Most likely December, based off of 3 or 4 months, right? So if you were going to have like that's like 2 months of Rage of the Abyss. I think you do have to
Yeah.
factor a lot of that in. We can
Yeah.
talk a little bit about like let's focus on like pre-Rage of the Abyss for now. I think that's actually the biggest problem. We can complain about how Snake Eye is literally going to probably be tier 0 again after Rage of the Abyss. The problem is Snake Eye is really good right now. Really good with this list. I think it's super strong. I think it might still be the best deck. There's only going to be one broadcasted event during this format. I checked this after.
Mhm.
There's YCS Mexico, there's a Team YCS in Chile, and there is YCS Lille.
Yep.
I think Snake Eye will be the deck for Lille still. It's still really strong. A single Ash Blossom, not Ash Blossom, a single Snake Eye Ash still ends on Princess, Mask, Desiree, Silhouette Rabbit, with the follow up of
Yeah.
Flamberge, right? So
Yeah.
it's still really powerful. Not to take, not to put too much emphasis on this, but MVT posted on Twitter just the other day, like last night, he went to locals. He played post ban list Snake Eye, pre ban list, current format, and he won with the Snake Eye. The deck is
I
very good.
It is good. I don't think it is, at least especially pure Snake Eye, I don't think is gonna be the deck for these events. I think people are gonna try. I think people are gonna play it. I think people are gonna have some success with it. I think what this ban list did before Rage of the Abyss is bring Snake Eye down to a level that other decks can deal with better. It didn't kill Snake Eye, 100% did not. I think the premier version of Snake Eye is going to be Fire King Snake Eye, mainly because of the Apollosa ban. Because I think pure Snake Eye will have issues playing around Nibiru. There are probably like lines to do it, but I personally don't see myself playing pure Snake Eye over Fire King Snake Eye because Fire King just has access to like Arvata and all that kind of stuff.
I think Arvada
Um,
is really good. My biggest issue with Fire King is, when you play around, I've played around a little bit with it on Mastu, and like you really notice just how important Alkanix is personally.
Um, Alkanix is missing for us. That's true. I will say I have been trying versions without Alkanix, and it's been fine. Especially compared to Master Duel, in the TCG, we have two more Wanteds and one more Bonfire, so you have more consistent access to, like, you can replace the Alkanixes basically because it's just like a starter, right, for the deck, for the most part.
Mm.
So you can replace that factor, but yes, it is in that regard weaker than it is in Master Duel. I still think the deck is, in my opinion, it's the way to go. At least it's where I would start. Obviously, I haven't tested with the list yet, but it's where I would start. It's where I would put like that deck, in my opinion, is basically guaranteed to have top tier potential. Pure Snake Eye is something that I'd have to try and see if I think it's got top tier potential. But my gut feeling is that it's not as good as the Fire King version.
I personally think it's a big assumption, but going down into the predictions and stuff in the future, I'll just put it out there. I think Snake Eye Pure will still be the best. We'll see how it unfolds. But one of the
Mhm,
biggest hits to Pure, I think, um, I feel is like actually Beatrice, right? Because
mhm,
the inability to have that bridge into your Snake Eye engine is really, really rough. Um,
yep,
but again, it's really weird because even if you still get hand trapped on like Witch
yep,
Ash, like you still go for like a closed heaven line into Princess, bring back Ash, and then send and summon Flamberge, right? I
yep.
think missing Flamberge or Original Sin was just such a mistake. One of
Oh, no,
those
I
had
I
to
I
be
agree
banned.
with you. That's the thing. I do agree with you. When I'm saying, like, this list touched it hit Snake Eye, I still wish it did more. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I do not agree with people saying, like, the list changes nothing. Like, from the perspective of someone who's been trying to not play Snake Eye for the past format and, like, mostly playing against it, I do think this list does change things.
Yeah, I think the Appaloosa well, I mean, we can talk about Appaloosa after because I feel like that might be its
Yeah.
own kind of category. But
Mhm.
Fiendsmith, sorry, but Snake Eye specifically, like you do notice, um, with the consistency of losing 2 copies of Ash, it's still decent. You're still doing kind of the same stuff. Losing the
Yep.
Appaloosa is really hard. I think like the deck might kind of start to struggle to play through multiple hand traps.
So here's the thing. Let's go through some of the aspects that I think change about pure Snake Eye. The first thing is that you're gonna draw Snake Eye Ash directly a lot less often, which I think the overall consistency, if you look at it in a vacuum, doesn't matter that much. Like in just in terms of the raw consistency of the deck, you don't lose that much. You lose 2 starter out of a pool of, like, I don't know, 15 or something. Like, that's fine.
Which is crazy to
Technically, you
me.
also lose the Fiendsmith engine as a starter, so yeah, that is also different, right?
Yeah.
But I think one other factor is hand traps because I think, and that's the annoying part, we are still going to be in a hand trap format. But when you have to use your bonfire to search your Snake Eye Ash, or when you have to use your Diabell Star to get to Snake Eye Ash, you lose those kind of cards as potential extenders for your opponent to consider when they are trying to interrupt you. Like, when I have an Imperm in my hand, I feel a lot safer if my opponent had to bonfire for the Snake Eye Ash rather than if they just hard opened it. Because if they hard open it and I have an Imperm, I'm basically like, okay, well, if my opponent has a Dia Star, a Wanted, or a Bonfire, which was 9 copies of a card last format, my Imperm basically does nothing. Now, chances are, unless my opponent gets lucky and draws the one of, they have to use one of those cards to get to Snake Eye Ash, which eliminates a lot of cards from the equation that I have to consider of what they could still have, right?
Yep. And that's exactly right. Because you have to like essentially get Ash. I mean, yeah, you are reduced in your extension abilities, which
Yeah.
I think is a huge part of what the issue
So,
is here. But
like,
we also
yes,
have, I
it
mean,
should be. No, go ahead.
I was gonna move into the Fiendsmith section, right, which is where
Okay.
like I think now losing Lacrima is like kind of bad, but there's still options if you can get 2 bodies onto the field. That's the thing.
So so for the Fiendsmith cards, I genuinely want to say this is my favorite part of this ban list, and I feel like it is. I don't know if it's overlooked because everyone's been saying that's a good and welcome hit, but I really appreciate how they've handled this Fiendsmith situation because I don't know in which like where you were on this, but I personally did not really expect them to do really anything meaningful about Fiendsmith besides Beatrice. Like, I was expecting a Beatrice ban and people to still use the Fiendsmith cards to just, like, spam bodies and spam burn as well, close to time. I did not expect the Lacrima ban, right? Did
Uh,
you?
no, not even close. I
Yeah.
expected nothing to be done to the Fiendsmith engine. I thought maybe in a lucky universe they would ban closed heaven and then we could get rid
Mhm.
of like the hand trap format for a bit. Maybe if we can like start thinking about board breakers and stuff because right now just
Mhm.
2 bodies do combo is insane. Um,
Yeah.
absolutely, my 2 favorite changes is Appaloosa ban, which is a
Yeah.
whole other design discussion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Lacrima as well. Mostly
Yeah.
because honestly, the burn effect.
That one too, but I just, like, I thought about this and I realized, or, like, at least the way I'm interpreting it is I really like how they handled this Fiendsmith situation because Fiendsmith was set to come out and completely take over the game as like one of the best engines in almost every single deck, right? And it did that. It came out, it was super dominant, and everyone was asking like, "Hey, why did they give this deck two alternative like fusions uh like support when we already knew it was going to be super powerful?" Everyone was like, "Hey, this doesn't make sense. Why is there Aerial Eater here? Why did they make Necrocrypt Princess? This makes this overly powerful engine even stronger." And I personally think they did that so they could hit it without like they didn't want to kill it, but they did not agree with how good that engine was probably because like that's the way I interpret it. Let me know if you agree. But I felt like the OCG made those cards and the TCG was like we can't have those. Like not like that, right?
Maybe
And
it's
that's
hard.
why they were like, because this is how this turns out, right? Aerial Eater makes it so that you can actually after Beatrice and Lacrima ban, you can actually play the Fiendsmith cards in Fiend decks almost as if not that much changed. Like the Ubel deck already did, for example, often choose to go Aerial Eater over Lacrima. So for Fiend decks themselves, which the Fiendsmith is supposed to support, the cards are still really powerful. In every other deck, they are actually also still powerful, just not as powerful.
But the thing is, I feel like it begs the question: why even bother banning the Lacrima in the first place if your focus isn't the burn aspect, right?
Because it like makes the engine so much weaker without killing it.
But is it so much because you still have really good alternatives?
You have alternatives to Lacrima?
Well, yeah, I mean, like in Fiend deck specifically, like Ubel specifically, which we'll talk about in a bit, like you don't even like really go into Lacrima that often in Ubel
Okay, so
specifically.
here's the thing. Without Lacrima, one engraver is two less bodies.
Yeah, it is. It is obviously huge. Like I'm absolutely not denying that. It's just weird because I feel like I would have liked to have seen this engine not be put into everything, and I think Closed Heaven is obviously the root of that.
Yes, but here's the thing. Closed Heaven now also does less.
Hmm,
Closed
true.
Heaven, I don't think actually, let's think this through. If you have two bodies, you make a Closed Heaven, you make a Requiem, you tribute the Requiem to summon out a Fiendsmith. Um you'd have to go Necroquip Princess, and then you would still get a rank 6 out of it.
Yeah,
But if you go, you don't get
which is
sequence
why
plus
Beatrice
rank
ban
6
I think
anymore.
is really important there, right? If
So
it's specifically for Snake Eye.
Closed Heaven in generic decks now turns two bodies into two bodies. They just have a level. They just have level 6 and are fiends.
Yeah, like
Is
it.
that so bad?
Uh, I mean, Caesar
Like, come on, is
is
that so bad? Is that unreasonable in 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh?
probably not, right? Like I don't know. It's
You can still make sequence and then Aerial Eater, but that requires you to play a fiend deck, right? That is not that's not nearly as generic.
hmm, sequence into Desiree as well, I guess.
That's the thing. You still have options, but that's the point. They didn't want to kill it, right? We all understand that,
Hmm.
but it did get significantly weaker. Like I don't think you can really argue that it did get significantly weaker.
Well, the thing is, I don't think significantly. It's weaker, obviously, absolutely. You know, Lacrima is very
Mhm.
good, but I just think significantly is maybe an overstatement.
Okay.
Again, which is why I am so hung up on the fact that I would have preferred to have seen the engine died, or if you don't want to hit the Fiendsmith card, that's fine. It would have been nice to definitely just reduce the power ceiling of Snake Eye, right? I think Flamberge,
Yeah,
unbelievably
but like you're
important, had
circling
to
back
happen.
to another issue, right? Like I
Well, I
agree
mean,
with
they
you.
all
The
kind of
snake eye thing is a
interconnect, though. That's
problem,
the thing.
huh?
They all kind of connect together, right? Like,
Well, but like if Snake Eye is your main issue, then well, there you go. The Fiendsmith cards are now way more powerful in other decks than
hmm,
they are in Snake Eye. They're still good in Snake Eye. You can still play them, but they don't get you nearly as far. You know, you can't like you lose so many options, right? Apo is banned, so you can't use Engraver to make an Apo anymore. Honestly, and even if Apo was still legal, you couldn't. Engraver does not make Apo anymore, or a rank or a Link 4. Like it couldn't do that anymore because you go sequence, you can't get sequence does not summon two bodies any longer.
hmm. Yeah.
And so like Snake Eye actually in that regard takes a hit by the fact that like every Fiend deck benefits so much more from the Fiendsmith cards than the Snake Eye cards. Like if my opponent hand traps me, let's say I get hand trapped on my normal summon and then I get hand trapped on my Dia Bellstar. If I can turn those into a closed heaven, but then I'm passing on Caesar basically, or I'm passing on Desiree. But that's it.
After multiple hand traps, still strong, right?
But
Like that's
I
still
mean,
good. It's not like insurmountable. Of course, it's not
but
gonna
did you
be.
expect? I mean, did you expect them to not to make the cards not good anymore?
It's. I'm honestly, to tell you the truth, I am like really kind of scarred from the fact that it just is so splashable. I don't like that. I don't like
I don't
having.
think that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't agree with that. I think a
Yeah.
lot of cards like are splashable. I think that's fine. I think it's just like a matter of if these cards go into every deck. I think it's a matter of like I think in that case it's the special. I just think this is a very good decision to make those cards weaker without killing them. I think that is exactly what they wanted to do. And I honestly, this is much more than I was expecting. That's why I'm so happy with the way they handled Fiendsmith.
Yeah, no, for sure. I do agree that it's like I think individually, yeah, this is a good way to address
Yeah.
Fiendsmith. It's just like with other cards as well alongside it, I would have settled for like Closed Heaven not being banned. Because obviously, they're not going to just kill Fiendsmith. That just logically doesn't make any sense. But if you
Mhm.
keep Fiendsmith around in a weaker capacity where it doesn't like do like a crazy amount, literally just full combo, like you do just do full combo with Close Heaven before the ban list,
Mhm.
after getting hand trapped twice. But I think like Lacrima ban quite important. But if they
Yeah.
also hit Flamberge or Original Sin,
Yeah.
um, that's where I think I would have liked the deck to have been, because I think that drops the
Yeah.
power level of the deck so significantly,
Yeah.
that it really is in line with the third, fourth, fifth best decks of the format.
Mhm. No, 100%. I agree with you. I would say like I would say if this ban list banned Flamberge, I would be in love with it, basically, right?
Yeah,
But but when I'm looking past Snake Eye, I just like I love the Fiendsmith hits is what I'm trying to say basically. I know you look at him in context of Snake Eye exclusively, in which case obviously they're not helping. The fact that you can still play them in Snake Eye doesn't help the
yeah.
cause. But like overall, I think except with how it handled Snake Eye, I just like this list.
For trivia, I suppose this is the fastest ever ban of a
Yeah,
cards. It is
yeah,
46 days or something like that.
yeah,
Setting a precedent that I guess we could see cards that are very new get banned. Ultimately, don't
yeah.
forget its rarity. So, you're probably not going to be seeing like 3 of secret rares get banned. But Lacrima as a one of common, or super is it? Getting
Yeah.
banned is
Yeah.
pretty significant, just in the terms of the context of ban lists.
Yeah, and that is the thing that I appreciate about this ban list, and that is also what I appreciated, for example, about the list that touched the super heavy samurai super fast, right? And I just like I feel like in this case it's a matter of credit where credit is due. This ban list does some things right, like I don't think it's fair to say this ban list changes nothing and it's like stupid and all that kind of stuff, right? I think the problem is Snake Eye, and I think a big problem is Rage of the Abyss. Um, but the way some other stuff was handled on this is pretty good.
Yeah, a little bit more about Apollosa.
Yeah.
People were saying how Apollosa was like a significant hit to Ubel, which, um,
No, that's not true.
yeah, ironically enough, a lot of people topping the most recent YCSs were just straight up just not playing it. Apollosa being such a, you know, huge investment, and the fact that your extra
Yeah.
deck in that deck is so tight, people were just actually just not playing it in Ubel. So, Ubel kind of just getting off quite nicely with this list, and as well on top of that, Apollosa setting a nice precedent for the fact that Baron died, Savage died,
Yeah.
and just the generic end board pieces slowly getting picked apart. So
Yeah.
good hit.
I love it. I think in the specific case of Ubel though, I think it does actually the opposite of what people are saying in that case. Or if people are saying that, I didn't see that many people say it, but I think the fact that Appaloosa is banned is going to make it so that a lot of decks are going to have to really worry about Nibiru, right? Nibiru is going to be a real problem for a lot of decks in the format. And whether a combo deck is going to be viable is going to obviously depend on the fact like how well can I insulate my combo from Nibiru. You know, like maybe some Fiend decks are going to have the option to go for a Caesar. The Fire King Snake Eye deck can obviously put up Arvata, but I think the deck that benefits the most from if everyone starts playing Nibiru left and right is a deck like Yubel that has a built-in super easy way to counter Nibiru in Phantom of Yubel, right? So I don't agree that the Appaloosa ban hits Yubel because that deck is not dependent on Appaloosa for its form of interaction.
Yeah, and as a design choice as well, it's really good. But also, I was thinking about this earlier and not complaining about it at all, but it's really weird to have Appaloosa Alt Art as your marketing advertisement for your rarity collection. Look at all these cool rarities you can get Appaloosa in and the new artwork, and then to just ban it. It really reminds me about what we talked about with Matt Bell about how like it seems like product design and game design seem to always be at odds with each other.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, they did the same thing with Baron, right? I honestly feel like maybe the reasoning for this, which is shitty reasoning, I think, is like they want to give it like one last ride, like one last reprint, you know? Like now it's fine, it's completely accessible for super cheap now, and it helps sell that set. It wasn't the main selling point of the set because it was already reprinted beforehand. But yeah, it was like, like one last ride with the reprint, and then we're just gonna get rid of it, which it was exactly the same way with Baron.
It's so strange. Like it really kind of rubbed me the wrong way, thinking like, okay, well, Baron was like the same situation, and then like, you know, they did it again with Appaloosa. I was like, what's the next one? Like, are we gonna have like SP get banned one day from a rarity collection reprint, some all art SP? Calling it now, by the way, probably all art SP. You know.
I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying. I think it's weird. But I don't know if Appaloosa really was Appaloosa the main selling point of Rarity Collection too? Because it was like it was not that expensive
I'd say
beforehand, was it?
so. It
Yeah,
was definitely like on the website when they first dropped the announcement. Like I think that was like the first
yeah,
card they showed was like
yeah.
Appaloosa all art. So maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah. So let's talk about I suppose like the last card, Beatrice. I think overall a healthy, good thing for the game. Having a generic Lavavel chain, quick effect as well. By the way, is
Yeah,
clearly past its time, and I think at some point it should have been hit even earlier. But
yeah.
obviously, Burning Abyss being the most nerfed deck off of this ban list over Snake Eye. By the way, just fun fact. Yeah, I don't know. It's a sad thing for like 4 people in the world, but ultimately it definitely had to go.
Yeah.
And I just hope we get some support in the future. Beatrice has always been the culprit behind so many like really dumb degenerate plays. Angel of Blue Tears searching Dimensional Barrier, setting up Scythe locks in previous formats. Beatrice has never really done anything fair. So
Except when it was played in BA in like 2016.
very weird, huh? Crazy.
Yeah.
That's wow. Okay. I was trying to bargain with Twitter and say, listen, if I duel you and I tell you that my only legal target is Backjack and Farfa, will you let me play it out of pity? A lot of people said yes, so that's good to know. I guess that's it for the ban cards. I mean, I suppose we talked about some missing pieces.
I
A
mean,
lot of the
Calamity
Snake
is
Eyes.
there, but I feel like Calamity we don't have to talk about much. That's just good. We've been asking for that.
Yeah, that happened. Like it should have happened a while ago, weirdly, but
Yeah.
whatever. We'll take it at any
We'll take
point.
it. It's fine.
Is there anything else that should have been banned other than the Snake Eye cards? Like banned?
Um,
Like skill drain is maybe like the only other discussion point
yeah, I
worth
mean, the,
having.
the only thing that comes to mind when we're talking actually like banned cards is like Floodgates, Dimension Shifter is a card
Oh,
that
we
people
should
obviously mention.
actually probably mention branded. I think this is
Yeah,
the important one, right? Because this was a strange list. They limited fusion,
yeah,
and they didn't ban Sanctifier, which I think
yeah,
everyone unanimously was kind of agreeing that like Sanctifier being the problem card, where
yeah,
you can summon Jaugen and like Masadu, you can puppet lock your opponent in TCG. Like it's always doing something. Like no one is using Sanctifier for fair reasons, and it isn't an important combo piece. So why not just ban Sanctifier? Something
yeah.
to do with rarity or like some reprint or megatins is I think some people were saying.
If any of that is the reason, I find it stupid. And I, as much as I like the way like Fiendsmith was handled, I hate the way Branded was handled. Like I just like I it blows my mind. obviously conceptually it makes some sense. Like cards like Effect Veiler, Impermanence, they get better against branded now because if you actually get to hit the Aluber, for example, it's harder for them to get the branded fusion. So like it makes the deck a little bit weaker, but on the other hand, they have so many ways to search branded fusion and still do the exact same lock as they did before. So I just don't like that. I think it was so much better to hit the Albion and just get the actual problem with the deck out of here, because outside of puppet locking or any other kind of lock, the branded deck is actually like pretty cool, honestly. It's been out for a long time, but like it's fine as long as it doesn't lock you. So yeah, I don't like the way this was done.
I mean, unironically, like maybe the interpretation of this is that it's fine and branded, but it was a hit to like voiceless. It was a hit to Chimera. Like maybe they just didn't like you splashing it and stuff.
I think that they were probably aware that they didn't hit Snake Eye as hard as they should have, and so they didn't want to take away the one of the only things that lets Branded keep up with a powerful deck like that. Like I think I'm pretty sure they're aware that Sanctifier is the one that should go eventually. I'm just like they're just like, okay, this list we can't kill Snake Eye for this or that reason, so we should also not like hit Branded too hard. Is the way I see it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, in some other ways, it's also I don't know if people and branded experts can weigh in, but I don't think you're gonna replace. I don't think you're gonna be just like straight up pivoting to like how Macedo runs, where you just have like grass versions and multiple,
Oh yeah, we got grass.
integers over 40 cards played, right? Like that was also a shocking return, was
Mm.
grass.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how branded is going to be played. I don't know if people are going to mess around with the grass version. I kind of doubt it. But I think because we still have three opening, three Aluber, and all that kind of stuff, I think you're probably still best just playing close to 40. I think you're still going to see branded fusion often enough. You can also just play a bunch of those ways to like you can piece together to find a branded fusion by like sending it to grave and then adding it back with retribution. That stuff usually also can't be interacted with like Veiler and Imperm, so that's pretty good. But yeah.
Uh, I think that's basically it for like the major stuff. We can probably start talking a little bit about some of the limitations. Let's talk
Yeah.
about Tenpai. I suppose that's quite important. Tenpai
Mhm.
losing Sangan summoning, and I suppose you could look at Pot of Prosperity as
Oh,
well as
absolutely. Yeah,
the big hit
100%.
there.
Yeah.
I will say this is my view on the Prosperity hit. I've been wanting Prosperity limited slash banned for years. Like I think it
Yeah.
should have been hit years ago, 2022. It was an absurd card and
Yeah.
onwards in multiple different decks. My issue with Prosperity being limited is the timing.
Yeah.
The best decks don't use Prosperity, so this only hurts rogue decks slash Tenpai if you want to look at it as like a sort of anti-meta kind of pick, right? Like other than
Yeah.
Tenpai, you are only nerfing rogue decks, which I don't like at all. I feel like
Mhm.
it's yeah, I don't like the timing.
I yeah, I guess. But that's also it's only a very temporary thing. I think it's only a matter of time until we get top tier meta decks again that will use prosperity. Um,
Did we
so I
just
guess
talk about Azamina and Rage of the Abyss in like 6 weeks? It's gonna be a while before Prosp becomes a
I
meta
don't.
card
I
again.
mean, that's not the last Yu-Gi-Oh deck they're printing.
It might be actually after this
Like
year.
prosperity is a card that deserves to be at one, so I don't have much of an issue with it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's that deep. I think the reasoning is probably like they were trying to reprint it like a couple times, and now it's
yeah.
fine to be at one.
It's
I
such a
agree with
routine.
it being at one, so I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. So Prosper and Sangan summoning are like huge
Yeah.
consistency hits, I think, in Tenpai. I
It's
think
not just consistency, it's also just the fact that like if your opponent can end on one way to interact with Sangan summoning, that's your only Sangan summoning. So as
mhm.
long as you can make sure you have like one access to, I don't know, SP Little Knight or something, you can use that SP Little Knight to interact with the Sangan summoning, and then you can use your other stuff to actually interact with Tenpai. So
Yeah.
that's just it's a very I think it's a very good hit. Um Simply because if you can out one of them, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Like Sangan, I hate this card. Not a fan of this whatsoever.
Okay.
It's why years ago when Dino was like kind of a decent deck, like people were constantly complaining about how like
Yeah.
unfun it is to play against a deck that just doesn't let
Mhm.
you interact with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take one copy over three for sure, but
Yeah.
please don't design cards like that, Konami. Like, please, it's
Yeah,
just
you could argue that the card should be banned. I feel like that would have been excessive. when with just from a pure power level perspective of Tenpai, like the deck wasn't that good. It's a good deck. It was a meta deck. It won Euros. Like it's strong. But I don't think like relative to the other hits that happened on this list, I don't think Sangan summoning Band would have been justified. Even though I do agree with you, it is by far the most frustrating card to play against in that deck.
Yeah. We didn't actually talk too much about grass outside of the context of branded. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a that's a fascinating card, right? Like I don't know if
Mhm.
Tearlament maybe might start upping their count. Personally, I like playing Tearlament with low deck count in TCG.
Yeah. We
Thrust for
have we have
grass is
one of each
huge.
tier name, right?
Yeah, one of each tier name, but no
Yeah.
Kekalos is
I mean, have fun milling those in 60.
yeah. You still have 3 Rhino, I suppose. You can play
Yeah.
like the Rainbow Bridge, the Trivikarma, things like that become really
I'm sure
nice to
people will
mill.
try. I'm
And
sure people will
Thrust.
try, and that's why I like it. I think it gets people thinking. I think it gets the cogs
I,
turning in the
yeah.
head. And
I'll
hmm?
So so it's funny because I think there's two ways to look at grass. I think you could look at it as like a fairly poorly designed card. Like if you play a graveyard deck, you activate this, you kind of win the game depending on your deck, right? Like if you just have 10 triggers go off, like
Mhm.
how can you interact with that? On the other hand, as you said, like I think it's so cool for deck building, and I actually had this random argument on my Discord earlier. I was like, why are people so obsessed with tier limit? It's like mill decks have such a unique dynamic of deck building. You aren't just
Mhm.
like building a Snake Eye deck to like, what is my defensive card ratio? What is
Yeah.
my opening hand extender ratio? When
Mhm.
you have
Yeah.
mills involved, it's a whole different equation and
Mhm.
formula you're doing when you think about your deck building. Because now you have to consider opening cards, milling cards, and the statistics behind that. And I think Grass
Yep.
promotes that. And I think
Yeah.
it's such a just a cool card in that regard.
I like it because also like thrust exists, so it's not like a I'm playing 60 cards and if I get ashed on left arm offering, I guess I'm leaving the venue and I only have one grass in 60, so it's super high rolly. But like thrust is like thrust is a good card that basically ups the count of grass to 4, but only when you're going second. But it's like you see this in Master Duel a lot where it's a viable strategy without it being like top tier or dominating, right? Like 60 card decks with thrust and grass and some power spells or board breakers and stuff like that. Like that's a real thing in Master Duel, and they work quite differently. And it's just been an axis of deck building that we just haven't had in the TCG. And I
For
think
a
it's
while.
cool that they're adding it without like it being problematic.
Yeah, just to say, if someone ashes my left arm, I'm not like leaving the venue. I'm leaving the country, dude. It's like
No.
that's painful. Um,
Mhm.
I'm wondering to see like how people build this in tier. Like, I don't think you play 60. I think it's like 50 is like a number, right? You
You
could,
could yeah, that's another thing. You don't have to play 60. Like if your deck on average mills like 10 cards and it's still fine, you know.
yeah,
If you go second and your opponent goes through their combo, their deck count is down a lot as well. So maybe like thrust into grass is one way how you could beat like an established board even. Like you just mill like suddenly your opponent has deck thinned a lot because they've gone through their combo, so they're down to
yep,
like I don't know 30 cards in the deck, 20 something, and now even if a 50 card deck plays grass, they mill like 20 or more.
yep, exactly. I don't think we're really gonna see any resurgence of something like Lightsworn. That was kind of a little bit of a popular deck that when it was released,
Actually,
but it
there's
kind of fell
literally
off.
been people in the OCG. Someone in chat just mentioned that, but like there's been people who've been siding grass for going second because when you go second, your opponent is expected to go through a lot of cards.
Yeah.
So even if you play like 40 something,
Hmm.
if your opponent starts, you can side in like Thrust and Grass in like a 43 card Tearlament deck or something, and it'll still mill like over 10 cards.
Yeah, like it doesn't have to be like 25 and then triggers 10 effects. Like,
Yeah.
even just milling like 5 plus, like that's a good number, right? That's what Kkalos does. So,
That's a very good number for one card. Yeah.
yeah.
So I
Um,
like it. Overall, I think it's good because it's and especially here's another thing that you're gonna like. It doesn't go into any of the meta decks, right? It only helps decks that were not meta before.
yeah. Uh, yeah, I think that's it for some of these limitations. I mean, I don't know if you've done any research into the gimmick puppets. I have no idea. Apparently, the FTK is still like doable. I don't know how true that is.
If that's true, I think that's
It just didn't do
insane.
anything, but
That's crazy. Like
maybe.
if you are gonna put two gimmick puppet cards on your list, please make sure it stops the FTK. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't quote me on that. I feel like I saw some people saying it's still doable. But yeah, it's still around.
Okay, that's weird then. In my opinion, I think obviously people were complaining like, "Oh, how was Gimmick Puppet hit harder than Snake Eyes?" Which I guess, yeah, complaining about Snake Eyes is valid. At the same time, hitting an FTK deck is also very valid, even if it's not the top tier deck.
Uh,
So I was low key hoping they would get rid of the FTK, but if they just hit Gimmick Puppet without getting rid of the FTK, that is just hilarious and stupid.
So apparently it's just like massively less consistent. It is
Okay.
viable. It is doable. You can do it, but
It's
apparently,
funny how hitting extra deck cards makes the deck less consistent. Gimmick Puppet is weird, man.
yeah. Field spell is like the most important part apparently. So
Okay.
yeah. So I don't think there's anything else here. Like opening the spirit gates. I guess like having like fiend pile stuff. Like, I will say, I'll put my hands up. I'm really happy that Gates took the hit and not like something like Yama. I would not
Yeah.
be happy if like an Unchained card got hit because of Ubel. That would suck.
Mhm.
Um, why is
Yeah,
Sharvara at one? That pisses me off, man. Bring
that
back
is
Sharvara.
indeed that is kind of stupid. Yeah. I just like with you, Bell, the kind of thing happened that I was talking about before the ban list. I mentioned this a couple times. I was afraid that this exact thing was going to happen, where because Phantom is so new and high rarity, and was kind of used to sell the Battles of Legends set, which was otherwise not that great outside of the Ritual Beast deck. Like everyone kind of predicted that they weren't going to hit that card and they weren't going to hit Bell too hard, and that Bell was kind of just going to be like the next one card combo deck in the format, which I think is the case now. I think it's very good, and I think the fact that the Fiendsmith cards are better in Bell than in other decks because it's actually a Fiend deck. I think it's a real top tier top deck contender, like over Snake Eye. Like I think the fact that Bell barely lost anything, and Snake Eye lost, two Ashes, Poplar, Appaloosa, Beatrice, and the Fiendsmith engine got weaker for it. I think you could make a case that Bell benefits the most from this list.
Yeah, 100%. If
Yeah.
you're a top tier deck that people were even running in like the playoffs because they were that
Yeah.
confident in how strong it was, and your only casualty is like what Gates, you are very happy right now as a UBL player. So
And I think that's where the quote unquote hidden hit to Snake Eye on this list also is a little bit. It's just the fact that Snake Eye got hit harder than Bell, and they were already kind of close to each other in terms of representation. Like it wasn't like a clear. I mean, it was clear that Snake Eye was better, but Bell was still really powerful, and people knew that, and people played it, and it got a lot of representation. Um, and if Bell overtakes Snake Eye, like the script is flipped, you now have a new best deck in the format. Could be the case. That is also an indirect hit to Snake Eye because all of the people that were just going to try to play the best deck in the format are going to move from Snake Eye to Ubel, which for the overall health of the game, in my opinion, doesn't do that much because Ubel is
not a
very
fun deck.
similar in play style to Snake Eye, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, that's a different story, right? 'Cause I do think Ubel will be a lot more popular and maybe even more popular than Snake Eye now. So that's kind of where the Snake Eye hit is. I just don't think that's that great overall.
Last remaining hits is or changes is there are 14 changes,
Yep.
and I don't think a single one is worth talking about.
Yeah. Like this is the
That's
sad
really
part about
sad.
this list. The sad part about this list is that the only literal only card that moved up the ban list that's worth talking about is Grass.
Yeah. Um, it's good that we're tidying up the list. Admittedly, I
I
don't
mean,
see
yeah,
the point.
it has to happen, right? That's why it needs to happen is because those cards don't matter. Like it's just there's not much to talk about, and it probably could have happened sooner if you wanted those cards to have an impact.
Yeah, it seems like I'm hoping that it isn't perceived as like, oh, look at all these like crazy returns.
I
Oh,
think it is used. I think it is used in a way to like inflate the ban list to make it seem bigger than it is because people were demanding a big ban list. So maybe they were like, you know what? We'll give him a big ban list. We'll bring back like a bunch of cards.
I'm gonna repeat
And
this joke again because I have to put it in the podcast. But I said like this ban list feels a lot like an MBT video where there's just like a lot of things being like said, but like nothing. They're not really doing anything, right? Like,
Uh,
that's that's how I wanted to describe it. I'm glad I got that on the podcast. But unironically, like, why not just put the 2 cards to 3? Like, okay, fine, you're cleaning up the unlimits, but like, do the dragon
but
rules
then
need
you
to go
can't
to
use
2
them to
first?
inflate the next ban list.
True, yeah. You gotta keep the content
The
machine
next ban
running.
list, we're gonna demand a big ban list, and then it's gonna have Redox, Tempest, Blaster, and Tidal to 3.
That's just like word count on your essay, right? Like those 4,
I think it is that. Unironically, I think it is that.
they have like a
I don't think it's
quota.
that deep. I think it's just like they're turning those cards into a tool for like for the sake of like making ban lists look fancier.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Like, it really baffles me that there was 29 changes and there's like 2 major topics to talk about. I don't really have anything else to add. Like, is there anything else you wanted to go over?
Uh, I think we've touched on a lot of stuff. I don't know how long this has been going for, but
Not that long, 1 hour 15
hmm.
plus technical difficulties.
I mean, I think I don't know where you stand on it, but my personal like I said it in the beginning, but I still think like overall this is a fine list. It's just that I'm mind blown by Rage of the Abyss. Like
Mm.
my frustration is more directed at how in your like who in their right mind would be like, yeah, now is the time where we need to release a set that contains Snake Eye support. Like that is what's blowing my mind. Like I am not I am not dissatisfied with the fact that for now Snake Eye is weaker and Yubel probably is better and Fire King Snake Eye is probably the way to go. Like that's a different version of the deck that wasn't played before. Like I think overall this list is doing a fine job for the next couple of weeks. But then Rage of the Abyss is just like a terrible set in my opinion.
I don't have, unfortunately, a lot of positives to say. I'll be completely honest. I think like even best case scenario, if we do get a temporary respite from Snake Eye, which I disagree. I think Snake Eye is not disagree, but I think Snake Eye is very good, very strong, really, really powerful still, despite the hits. Even so, if that wasn't the case, we have Rage of the Abyss coming in like less than 2 months, and then it's just all over again. People are gonna have the same complaints. I know from talking to so many people all the time in the community how much some people hate Snake Eye and are so sick of Snake Eye, and I am really, really worried about the numbers for Yu-Gi-Oh for this first half of the season. Like this yesterday, LA Regional, one of the biggest, bigger than YCS's, had an attendance drop of like 80%. I feel like if we get another Snake Eye format where people are seeing like the same Snake Eye cards being activated on them and stuff, I'm concerned. Like I'm worried about people.
How big was the regional?
Like 200-300 people attended. Usually it's like 8-9.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
It's usually like a 4-digit regional. Houston was like the week before. I think that dropped by like half. So it's
I think no matter what, whether you blame the ban list or whether you blame Rage of the Abyss, I think we're all in agreement that like Snake Eye format needs to end sooner rather than later, and this ban list is not going to end it. And that's a problem. And I think everyone agrees that like my main takeaway from this is I don't think we can afford to wait another 5 months. Like this next wait cannot be this long.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that. I think if this, I think the game might already suffer from this one, but if the next update post Rage of the Abyss is if that one takes too long, I think it might seriously suffer. And also if it's not a good list, the next one. Like on the next list, literally do what you did with the Fiendsmiths now. Like do a list like a month after Rage of the Abyss, give it to us in November, and just be like, yeah, okay, like Flamberge is gone now or something. Like try
I
something else with your Zamina cards. I don't know.
I genuinely really, really hope that this December we get the 2020 treatment. Like I want like Harp, Electromite, Colossus, like all of those getting banned. Engage, like I just we haven't had like a massacre in Yu-Gi-Oh ban lists
We
for a
need that.
while. Like
Yeah,
that
we need
needs to
that.
happen.
We need it. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and
They've
it's
done a whole lot of, oh, we're just gonna slightly hit decks and let like power creep handle it. We're at a point where that's not sufficient. That's not gonna work. You
yeah.
can't power creep Snake Eye because the deck that power creeps Snake Eye is a deck that no one wants to play against.
This is the thing. I am actually super excited for the deck build decks like
Yeah.
Malice, Raziel. I hope the other one is also powerful.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure how good it's going to be. It didn't look
Yeah.
amazing. I don't know how it's doing
Yeah.
over in OCG, but yeah, I think if you just just delete like this year and last year of Yu-Gi-Oh like from the card pool.
Not even that. It's just like, so even this and last year there were cool decks coming out. It's just been overshadowed by Snake Eye, and the reason is lore LMAO.
uh, it's the story and these that are the problem all along. But I'm really excited for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, I think like the new deck build pack seems like it's going to breathe a new type of life into the game. Super hyped for it, and I think a lot of this does boil down to like the one card combo card design, right? I think the problem
Yeah.
is ban lists are too volatile, right? Because every deck that you ban or limit, like it feels like whatever you do, it's on a knife edge with Snake Eye. Like you do like you turn a cog like a little bit anti-clockwise and like you've broke the deck. A little bit too far in the other direction, you've done basically nothing. So I think that's kind of like just the nature of Snake Eye. And I'm glad that whenever the lore of it finishes, that will be done. And I can't wait to play some Malice Raziel format. I hope those decks seem every deck has its own problem, whatever, but they feel very, very much less oppressive than what Snake Eye is at.
Yeah. It's just Snake Eye has really been a problem to 2024 Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hope we don't suffer from it too long. I hope we don't suffer from it like in the long term by like losing players from it, but I can see it happening, honestly. I can definitely see it happening. It's unfortunate, but I can.
Yeah. The Patreon question of the week, which I forgot to mention as well. Hope you guys are also enjoying the content, listening on Spotify and on YouTube. But if you do want to subscribe and support the channel, best way to do that is through Patreon, a singular $1. And you get access to the Discord, and you can ask the Patreon of the week, and as well suggest topics and stuff. The current topic is, of course, the ban list. We're just posting this one as an emergency. Next week, you get the Stun podcast, and then the week after, we'll also have the Worlds roundup recap with whoever wins it, or hopefully a TCG Andy takes down both Macedo or TCG specifically, yeah, because it would be cool to have both subjects. But that's the plan going forward. The Patreon question of the week is, since we're on the topic of ban lists, how would you feel if they had the ban list Duel Links system? For context, anyone wants to know, Duel Links has a system of, it has an unlimited, well, it has a 3 number, like, I wouldn't call it unlimited.
3 number.
So they have like semi-limits and limits, and all of those cards mean that you can only play that amount. So for example, if Ash Blossom is at 3 and Imperm is at 3, you can only play a total of 3 of those cards. So you can only play 2 Ash and 1 Imperm, or
it's like a
3
shared
Ash.
card pool kind of thing. So if 2 cards are at 3, they are basically in the same shared card pool.
Yeah. So yeah, just right off the bat, I think that would be a terrible idea. That wouldn't work, but it's a nice little experiment to think about. I think it would definitely be fascinating, because maybe you could argue that like hand traps are the best example of a group of cards that might potentially benefit from a shared card pool limitation. Like maybe if you were to put Ash and Imperm into at 3, perhaps that's something.
I don't see it from that perspective, because the way I like it the most in Duel Links is when like they can hit certain decks by just making them unable to play certain staples. Like when there's a really powerful staple in the game that's like, let's say it's at 3, and then there's this really powerful new deck in the format that has a really important 3 of. If you also put that 3 of to 3, they basically just can't play that staple anymore, but other decks still can. So it gives you a way to hit certain staple cards only for specific decks. It's like saying like, hey, the top tier deck can't play Imperm, but the lower tier decks can play Imperm because Imperm is at 3. The top tier deck has a card at 3 that they need to play, so that deck can't play it, but the lower tier decks have no issue playing it,
Yeah,
right?
you can start to take away extenders. You can start to take away defensive cards. Just by you put like Snake Eye Ash to 3. Well, we've also got like maybe like a different hand trap at 3. So you have to like
Yeah.
diversify your pool. You can have consistency, or you can play like something else, and that's an
Yeah.
interesting way to look at it. I think like overall, just like a practical logistical perspective, I don't think that would really work for Yu-Gi-Oh. I think we are so used to a certain system.
You can't change it like 20 years in.
Yeah, and also just like obviously you have to hand in a legal deck list and stuff, but like I feel like checking that is going to be kind of an awkward
It's
situation as well.
harder, yeah. It's a
It
lot
works
harder.
it works really well in digital form because, it programmed to do it for you, but in paper
Mhm.
it's like it would feel kind of bizarre in some
Yeah.
ways. And once you're
Yeah.
accustomed to a certain system, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's the Patreon question of the week. I suppose there was nothing else to really talk about. You could argue that there was some runic hits that maybe should have happened.
What do you
I
mean?
think there maybe should have been a runic hit or two, but I actually really love the skill drain hit.
Yeah.
Because what
Oh yeah,
I've
I don't think we talked about that.
yeah, it's kind of important. But basically, I think skill drain is really important at 1 or at least banned. What I've noticed is that runic stun, it very specifically, like, you will see skill drain in almost all of your matches, right? If you
Mhm.
get to a couple of turns, like, because you're drawing and digging so much, like, at
Yeah.
3 you will kind of get to the skill drain, and it's a very important win condition. But when you limit it, it's like, I think runic stun is going to be hit significantly, which I don't think anyone is worried about or concerned about. But
No, I mean, like it's like a matter of course there are replacements. That's always the argument of like some people of like, oh, people are now going to play this floodgate or whatever. But it simply is the matter of I feel like we've been talking about this last ban list as well with like anti-spell and summon limit. It's a process of eliminating certain floodgates that just are popular and out of hand, right? Like it's not reasonable from their perspective to like hit a floodgate that no one plays just in case people might want to start playing it next format. But it's like I like the fact that we are like moving down the list like it's like the Grim Reaper knocking on the door of all the floodgates, right? Like we're going down like okay, people were playing anti-spell when it was at 3 a lot, so we got at that. Summon limit was very popular, so we're getting rid of that. Then it was skill drain taking over, so now that's at 1. We'll see what happens next format, and maybe eventually we're
deck
done,
lockdown.
right? Eventually, we're like at the point where the floodgates that are left are either like not good enough anymore or actually have some way to be played around because some of these floodgates obviously are not being played for a reason, right? There's a reason why people preferred summon limit over skill drain, and there's a reason why now skill drain was preferred over deck lockdown. And so if we move down the list, they will get like worse and worse and worse and worse until the point where maybe they're like manageable.
I think that's like the funny thing about just how like much crossover there are with Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and like the floodgates are a perfect example because I mean there functionally was no difference between summon limit and skill drain when you're flipping that in the mirror against in
Mm-hmm.
Snake Eye, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as another point, skill drain probably not gonna be the go first cards that it was for Snake Eye. You could still play it and then throw in some deck lockdowns as well,
Yeah.
right? Kind of same thing. We'll see. Yeah, okay,
I
let's
mean, it's
wrap it up.
different, right? Like it's like there genuinely were games where if you went second, skill drain was a legitimate win condition, right? Like I can tell from my perspective, I played 3 skill drain at Euros in my runic deck, and I sometimes didn't even side it out going second. Can't compare that to deck lockdown. Like it's not as main deckable of a card as skill drain was, because if you go second and draw it into a board, like it's not the same.
All I'll say is caught. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Leave a comment down below, etc., etc. Thank you so much for the viewership as well. For those of you who tuned in live,
Oh yeah,
my
dude.
God,
It was a
like,
community event, dude.
dude,
This ban list week was a community event.
that was my second biggest stream ever after Master Duel release, the release
Yeah,
date. Like, that's how
that's
big my
crazy.
stream was. I don't know,
That is
like, you were
crazy.
pretty up there as well. Like,
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of you showed up
Yeah.
to check us out. So yeah, you guys,
That's how
unbelievable.
you know people still care about this game, you know? That's the nice thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's the
Snake Eye hasn't killed us yet, guys. Not
that's
yet.
that's the frustrating thing. It's like so many of us complain a lot, obviously, because we care, because we know just how good this game is at
We're
its
posting
essence.
horses because we love you, Yu-Gi-Oh!
They just need to understand, like the vomiting horse is a symbol of love. It's a symbol of our dedication to the game, right? Like you just couple of changes, product, bring down the price a little bit, the rarities, that kind of stuff, game design, make one card combos not a thing, make it 2 and 3. Perfect
That's
game,
that's also a little bit of a frustrating part. Is like, in some aspects, we're not asking for that much, dude. Just put a date on the thing.
Yeah.
Like, just print a promo for everyone at the top 32 of a YCS, bro. It's like one print run, dude. Just send like one dude to the printer.
Get a stamp
Like,
on 32 of the cards.
come on, man. It's not that hard. Huh? It's
So
not
many
that
things
much.
that could be done. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. Peace out. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Make sure I'll see what the hell that was about. But yep, tune in for next Saturday, where you'll be joined with us talking about stun decks. Oh yes, that'll be a volatile one, as
Yep.
Josh being one of the experts and such.
Yep.
Peace out.
Peace.